Good morning, Stewart's Chapel. Brother Don Pierson here, and Don counts. We're at the Harris's place again, and this is Monday's devotion. And I shared with you on Friday how this thing that I want to unpack is going to take some time. And I understand that the last two devotions have been longer than normal, and that's not my intention. It's just the way I believe this is going to play out. I want to go back again to Joel, and I know by the time we're done you will know these various verses. In Joel chapter 1 verse 4, what the chewing locust left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust left, the crawling locust has eaten. And what the crawling locust has left, the consuming locust has eaten. He has laid waste my vine, he has ruined my fig tree, he has stripped it bare and thrown it away. Its branches are made white. The vine has dried up, verse 12, and the fig tree has withered, the pomegranate tree, the palm tree also, and the apple tree. All the trees of the field are withered. Surely joy has withered away from the sons of men. And then verse 25, so I will restore to you, in chapter 2, verse 25, God's declaring hope. So I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the crawling locust, the consuming locust, and the chewing locust. My great army which I sent among you. So it's obvious once again that these locusts were the hand of God for discipline in their life. Now I recognize not everybody has a dark period in their life. This dark period in my life was not only dark for me, it was dark for my wife. If my children and grandchildren had been near, it would have been a dark period in their life. The truth is that this dark period in my life was not the result of anyone else other than myself. It wasn't because of a sin that I was going through this terrible drought and despair. It wasn't because of where I was. At that time I was with the convention, but it wasn't the convention's need. In fact, I don't think most people knew that I was in this terrible thing. At first, I thought it was just because I was tired and worn. I'd gotten to the place every time I would get into the car to go anywhere, to go and do a conference or whatever, I would weep. And I would weep from the time I would leave for off and on the whole time. When I would leave the conference and the presence of people and go back to the hotel or to a restaurant by myself, I would weep. I would be drained of sleep. I had found no rest during that period of time. My soul was in agony. I have thought about that many, many times, and the truth is I have told people at that time I think that that I was suicidal. I think there was that. I know that I did think about suicide often, but but there was something else more than that. During that period of time, actually, it was a death wish. Not something that I wanted to do at my own hand, but sort of like Elijah and Job. You see, when you read the book of Elijah and Job, you don't think of suicide. That wasn't on their mind. But they were pleading for death, that the awareness. I have seen that a lot of times. And I don't think that all ministers, and I'm not saying that I'm different. I guess because I've been through a period like that, I can understand it. But I recognize that a lot of times when someone is saying, I just want to die, it's not always because of depression. Now, I do believe that for me, I was in depression. But just because someone wants to die does not mean there's depression. Most of preachers I hear, when they talk about Elijah, they say he was depressed. Well, there's really no evidence of that other than the fact that he says, I want to die. I think that he feels defeated. I think he feels defeated. And feeling defeated does not mean depression either. I think he's saying, you know what, I don't see the use of this anymore. I mean, I keep doing what you keep telling me to do, but it would be a lot better. I think you just ought to take me home. I think there's some frustration there. For Job, probably depression. But there's something greater for Job than depression when he says, I want to die. He looks around him and he sees no hope. He can't figure out what God is doing. His friends are telling him it's discipline. Every voice around him is telling him something different. He's in a lot of physical pain. He's in a lot of mental and spiritual and emotional agony. And for Job, he said, it would be better just to die. Please just take me home and relieve me this. I guess what I want to leave with you is that those kind of times are not foreign to man. And every now and then I'll have someone tell me, I just don't see how I would never do. Well, I guarantee it. You haven't been there. I've seen people there because of a loss of a child or a loved one that they were deeply connected to, and they just wanted to join them, a husband, a wife, a child, someone like that. I've seen them there because of total failure or defeat, sometimes because of a decision that they made that they realize, I'm not going to get out of this. I've seen people there in the midst of divorce far more times than I can remember. And with divorce, their whole life is crumbling. The truth is, that is not foreign to man. It seems to come closer and closer than we realize. A disease can bring it on, but here's the thing that is foreign to man. The thing that is foreign to man is the idea that in the midst of despair there is hope. And only God can reveal that. And that's what God is doing in the book of Job. In the midst of despair, in the midst of defeat, in the midst of destruction, God says, don't stop. This morning I had a Bible study. And in the midst of the Bible study, we were looking at James. I'm going to finish up with this. We were looking at the first chapter of James, and I believe an epiphany, a revelation came to me. I knew what I had already done this and got ready for this. But all of a sudden, I'm reading through the first few verses of James where it says, count it all joy when you experience through various trials and sufferings. He says, because you know something. Now, he's talking to Christians, so evidently not all Christians have figured this out. But those who have figured it out, they know something and they can count it joy. And then he goes on and he tells them, if you don't know this and you ask, and then it happened. Then he goes talking about praying with faith and this, and not like a wave in the sea, up and down, up and down. And for the first time, and James is one of my major books, but for the first time I realized that the faith and this up and down was specifically given in relationship to trials and suffering. It's not about every day. It's not about your normal day. And people quote that scripture all the time about you're a double-minded man. No, here's the thing. He's saying to you, in the midst of trials, in the midst of despair, don't let your faith go up and down. In the midst of despair, you keep your hope high. You keep your hope high. That's the message of Joel. Now, the only way you can have that is you got to know something and know what God can do. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.